I raised my boy alone after cancer took my Sarah when he was just 7. Those years blur together now. The lunches I packed at 5 a.m., the parent-teacher conferences I attended still wearing my work boots, the nights I helped with homework even though I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. But we made it through. Or at least I thought we had. My name is Robert Mitchell, and for 53 years I've lived by a simple principle: do the work right or don't do it at all. I spent 31 years as a union electrician in California's Central Valley, the kind of man who believed that every wire you connect, every circuit you complete could be the difference between someone going home safe or not going home at all. My hands are scarred from work, my back aches on cold mornings, and I've never owned a suit that cost more than $200. But I've also never cut a corner, never signed off on work that wasn't up to code, and never once had to lie awake at night wondering if something I built might hurt someone. I thought I knew my son. 52 years of life teaches you that people surprise you, but your own child? That's different. Or so I believed until 3 days before his wedding, when he looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, I need you to understand something. You're embarrassing us." The "us" stung more than anything else. We were standing in the country club parking lot. His fiancée, Isabel's family, had rented the entire venue for the weekend. $200,000 for a wedding. I'd offered to contribute what I could, $15,000 I'd saved over 2 years. My son, Daniel, had smiled that new smile he'd developed since meeting Isabel, the one that didn't reach his eyes. "Dad, that's really generous, but we're fine. Isabel's father is handling everything." Now, 3 days before the ceremony, that same smile was nowhere to be found. "What do you mean I'm embarrassing you?" Daniel glanced back at the country club entrance. Through the glass doors, I could see Isabel's family mingling with the wedding planner. Her father, Charles Westbrook, stood at the center like a king holding court. Former CEO of Westbrook Properties, the kind of man who wore his net worth in his posture. Sophisticated? "Dad, please don't make this harder." I'd been a union electrician for 31 years, retired now on a modest pension. I drove a 15-year-old Ford pickup that had 200,000 miles on it and a crack in the windshield I kept meaning to fix. I lived in the same 3-bedroom house in Bakersfield where I raised Daniel after his mother died. I wore Wrangler jeans and work boots to anything that wasn't a funeral or a wedding. "What stories, Daniel?" He shifted his weight, looking everywhere but at me. "Like at the rehearsal dinner, you started telling everyone about rewiring that school in Fresno, about crawling through asbestos insulation. Nobody cares about that stuff, Dad. It makes you sound blue collar." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." The silence between us felt like a canyon. This was my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike in the driveway, running beside him until my lungs burned. The teenager I helped with algebra at the kitchen table until midnight. The young man whose college I paid for by working double shifts for 4 years straight, coming home so tired some nights that I'd sleep in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make it inside. "Look, Dad, I'm not saying don't come to the wedding. I'm just saying maybe keep a low profile. Let Isabel's family have their moment. Don't tell your work stories, don't mention the truck, don't talk about Mom. Maybe just smile and stay quiet." That last part hit different. Don't talk about Mom. Like the woman who worked as a nurse, who volunteered at the food bank, who'd made our small house feel like a home, like she was too ordinary for the Westbrooks. He drove away in his Audi, Isabel's graduation gift from her father. I stood there in the parking lot for a while, watching the sun set over the valley. The same valley I'd spent 30 decades keeping lit, keeping safe, keeping running. The wedding was beautiful, I'll give him that. The kind of beautiful that cost more than I'd made in 3 years. White roses everywhere, thousands of them. A string quartet, champagne I couldn't pronounce, ice sculptures, a 7-tier cake. Isabel wore a dress that probably cost more than my truck was worth. I wore the suit I'd bought for the occasion. Department store, but it fit well enough. I even got new shoes. My feet hurt within an hour, but I didn't complain. I stayed quiet, just like Daniel had asked. During the ceremony, I sat in the fourth row, not the front row where the father of the groom should sit. That spot went to Charles Westbrook's business partner, some man named Gregory I'd met once for 30 seconds. The Westbrooks had arranged the seating. Daniel had gone along with it. During the reception, I sat at a table near the back, by the kitchen doors, not the family table. They'd put me with some Isabel's distant cousins. Nice people, but strangers. We made small talk about the weather, about traffic, about nothing that mattered. I watched my son dance with his new wife, watched Charles Westbrook give a toast about welcoming Daniel into the family and the bright future ahead for the young couple. He talked about legacy, about building something that lasts, about the importance of knowing your place in the world. No one asked me to give a toast. I'd prepared one. Short, simple, just wanted to tell Daniel I was proud of him, that his mother would have loved to see this day. I'd written it down on a card in my pocket. It stayed there. Around 9 p.m., I left. I told the couple at my table I wasn't feeling well. They nodded sympathetically. Nobody else noticed me go. I walked through that country club, past the flowers and the laughter and the music, and climbed into my old truck. The drive home was 40 minutes. I didn't turn on the radio. The next morning, my phone rang at 6:15 a.m. Unknown number. Mr. Robert Mitchell? Speaking. This is James Morrison from Morrison & Associates. I'm calling on behalf of Daniel and Isabel Mitchell. Do you have a moment? My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. I was standing in my kitchen, still in my bathrobe, looking at the photograph of Sarah on the counter, the one from our wedding day. What's this about? I'm handling some estate planning matters for the couple. There is a document that requires your signature. It's somewhat time-sensitive. Would you be available to meet this morning? Estate planning? They just got married yesterday. Yes, sir. That's actually why this is time-sensitive. There are certain legal protections that need to be established early in a marriage. Could you come to my office at 9 a.m.? I knew the building. Glass and steel, 20 stories. The kind of place where electricians like me came in through the service entrance. Can you tell me what this is about? It would be better to discuss in person, Mr. Mitchell. Nothing about a lawyer calling at 6:15 a.m. the morning after your son's wedding felt routine. I'll be there. I arrived at 8:45, early, like I'd been trained to be my whole working life. The lobby was all marble and brass. A security guard at the desk looked at me like he was trying to decide if I belonged there. The receptionist on the 14th floor was young, professional, and gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. James Morrison arrived precisely at 9. Young, maybe 35. Expensive suit. The kind of handshake that came from country club memberships, not construction sites. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Mr. Mitchell. He sat down across from me, opened a leather folder, and slid a document across the table. This is a financial responsibility waiver. Essentially, Daniel and Isabel want to ensure there are clear boundaries regarding any future financial obligations or expectations. I stared at the words without reading them.
I'm not following. Morrison's expression remained professionally neutral. Daniel has indicated that you've made certain comments about expecting to be involved in their future, financially involved. They want to establish, in writing, that they don't expect or want financial assistance from you, and conversely, that you shouldn't expect any financial support from them. It also clarifies that you have no claim to any assets acquired during their marriage or any inheritance from the Westbrook family. The room felt smaller. What comments? I'm not privy to the specific conversations, Mr. Mitchell. I'm simply here to process the paperwork. They think I want their money? Morrison shifted slightly. Mr. Mitchell, this is actually quite common in marriages where there's a significant disparity in financial backgrounds. This protects both parties. I looked down at the document. Legal language I barely understood, but the intent was crystal clear. Daniel and Isabel wanted it in writing that I wasn't family anymore, not in any way that mattered. And if I don't sign? That's entirely your choice. However, Daniel indicated that continued family contact would be conditional on your cooperation. He and Isabel want to start their marriage with clear boundaries and no complications. Conditional? Complications. I was a complication now. I thought about the nights I'd worked until my hands bled to pay for Daniel's college. The scholarship had covered 60%. I'd covered the rest. 40% of 4 years at UC Berkeley. No loans, no debt. I'd taken every overtime shift I could get, worked weekends, worked holidays. I thought about the weeks after Sarah died when Daniel was 7 and would crawl into my bed every night crying for his mother. How I'd held him and promised everything would be okay. How I'd made his breakfast and packed his lunch and walked him to the bus stop every single day for 2 years. I thought about teaching him to drive in that same Ford pickup, about the time he dented the bumper and cried because he thought I'd be mad, about how I'd laughed and told him bumpers could be fixed. I need to think about this. Morrison checked his watch. I understand, Mr. Mitchell. However, I do need an answer by end of business today. Daniel and Isabel are leaving for their honeymoon tomorrow morning, and they'd prefer this resolved before they leave. I stood up. My knees creaked. 63 years of climbing ladders and crawling through attics had left their mark. Tell my son he can call me himself if he wants something from me. Morrison's professional mask slipped for just a second. Mr. Mitchell, I'd strongly encourage you to reconsider. This is a simple formality. If it doesn't change anything real, then why does it need to be in writing? I walked out before he could answer. The drive back to Bakersfield took 2 hours. I spent most of it replaying every conversation with Daniel over the past 2 years, since he'd met Isabel, since he'd started working at Westbrook Properties, since he'd started wearing expensive watches and using words like optics and networking, since he'd stopped calling me Dad and started calling me Robert in front of his new friends. My phone rang when I was 20 minutes from home. Daniel. Dad? Morrison said you walked out. He said you wanted me to sign away my rights as your father. That's not... Dad, you're twisting this. It's just a legal formality. Isabel's father insisted on it. It's about protecting assets, protecting the company. It's not personal. What assets, Daniel? I don't have anything you'd want. I've got a house worth maybe $200,000, a pension that barely covers my bills, and a truck that's older than your marriage. That's not... Look, this is embarrassing enough without you making it worse. Embarrassing for who, Daniel? Silence. I could hear traffic in the background. Isabel's family have expectations. If we're going to be part of that world, we need to play by their rules. We? Dad, there is no we here, son. There's you and them. And then there's me sitting at the back table near the kitchen, keeping quiet like I was told, not talking about your mother like she never existed. You didn't say you couldn't talk about Mom. You said don't mention her. Direct quote. Silence. I just meant at the wedding. It wasn't the right setting. When is the right setting, Daniel? When do I get to talk about the woman who gave you life, who raised you until she couldn't anymore? That's not fair. No, it's not. None of this is fair. I heard Isabel's voice in the background, sharp, impatient. I have to go, Daniel said. Think about what I'm asking. Just sign the paper and we can all move forward. He hung up before I could respond. My phone buzzed. Text message from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Mitchell, this is Marcus Chen. I was in the Electricians Union, Local 441. I worked with you on the Mercy Hospital project back in 2015. I heard you might be going through a rough patch. If you need to talk, I'm around. I stared at the message for a long time. Marcus Chen. I remembered him. Young guy, sharp, asked good questions. Last I'd heard, he'd left the union to start some kind of business. I called him. Robert Mitchell, I was hoping you'd call. How did you hear I was going through something? Small world. Tommy's daughter works at Morrison's law firm. She mentioned seeing your name and Tommy put two and two together. He called me because I might be able to help. I don't need charity, Marcus. Not charity, information. Can we meet? Casey's Diner on 5th Street. I did. Sarah and I used to go there on Sunday mornings when Daniel was little. When? I'm actually already here, back booth. 20 minutes later, I slid into the booth across from Marcus Chen. He'd aged well, still had that focused energy I remembered, but there was something different now. Confidence, success. Thanks for meeting me, he said. He slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a building, modern, glass and steel. Recognize it? That's where I was this morning, Morrison's building. Right. You know who owns it? I shook my head. Company called Westbrook Properties, Charles Westbrook's company. They own about 40% of the commercial real estate downtown. Guy's probably worth north of $2 billion. Why are you telling me this? Marcus leaned forward. Because I know you, Robert. You taught me more about electrical systems in 6 months than I learned in 4 years of trade school. But you know what else I learned? What? How to see a building. Not just the walls and wiring, the whole system, how everything connects, how shortcuts always come back. He swiped to another image. Blueprints, engineering diagrams, code violations marked in red. After I left the union, I started a company building automation systems, smart buildings. It's grown well. We handle about 70 buildings now. 11 of those are owned by Westbrook Properties. I looked up. I have contracts with Charles Westbrook's company, and I need to tell you something about those buildings, something I discovered 6 months ago. Marcus pulled up another file, engineering reports, inspection records, safety violations, photographs of exposed wiring, corroded panels, systems held together with electrical tape and prayers. Every single Westbrook building I've worked on has serious electrical problems. I'm not talking minor code violations. I'm talking dangerous, fire hazards, overloaded circuits, systems that should have been condemned, buildings that are one surge away from killing people. My coffee had gone cold. When I traced the problems back, you know what I found? What? Shortcuts, cheap materials, work signed off by inspectors who shouldn't have passed it. Charles Westbrook built his fortune by cutting corners and paying off the right people. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Why are you telling me this? Because 6 months ago, I submitted a formal report to the city about the Morrison building. Serious problems, Robert, the kind that could kill people if there's a fire. I recommended immediate remediation. Cost estimate was around $12 million. And Westbrook buried it. He's got connections. The report disappeared, but I kept copies. I've been documenting everything, but I need someone who knows these systems inside and out, someone who can testify about what proper electrical work looks like, someone beyond reproach who can't be bought or intimidated, someone with nothing to lose.
He looked at me. Someone like you. I sat back. You want me to go after my son's father-in-law? The man he works for? The man whose daughter he just married? I want you to help me do the right thing. Those buildings are dangerous. People work in them every day. If something happens and we knew about it and did nothing, I can't live with that. Can you? I thought about 31 years of doing everything by the book, of pride and work that would last, that would keep people safe. I thought about Sarah, who'd been a nurse, who dedicated her life to keeping people safe. When do you need an answer? There's a city council meeting in 4 weeks. I need to start preparing testimony now. I need expert witnesses. I need someone who can explain why this matters. He paused. But Robert, I need you to understand what this means. If you testify, it's going to make waves. Charles Westbrook will fight back. He'll hire lawyers. He'll try to discredit you. And Daniel will hate you for it. Probably. Your son works for Westbrook. He's married to Westbrook's daughter.
You do this, you're declaring war on his whole new life. Not destroy, hold accountable. To Charles Westbrook, there's no difference. I looked out the window at the city I'd helped build. Let me think about it. Marcus nodded. That's all I ask. But Robert, that paper Morrison wanted you to sign, don't. They can use it to say you're not family, that you have an agenda. It's harder to claim that if you're still legally recognized as Daniel's father. That night, I sat in my garage looking at my tools. Every wrench, every wire stripper, every voltage tester, organized on pegboards like they'd been for 40 years. Sarah's picture sat on my workbench, the last good day before she got too sick. Daniel was in it too, 17 years old, holding his mother's hand. My phone rang. Daniel. Dad, Morrison said you still haven't signed. I'm not going to sign it, Daniel. Dad. I need to ask you something. When you were 12, remember that science fair project, the one about electrical circuits? Silence. We spent 3 weeks building that display in this garage, testing every connection. You insisted on doing it the right way. You remember what you told me when you won second place? Dad, what does this have to do with... I said you were proud that it worked right, that it was built to last, that you'd rather lose doing it right than win doing it wrong. You said that's what Mom would have wanted. Do you remember that? That was a long time ago. Was it wrong then, or is it wrong now? I don't understand what you're asking. I think you do, son. I hung up. The next morning, I called Marcus Chen. I'm in. Tell me what you need. 3 weeks later, I sat in front of the city council with a stack of documentation 2 inches thick. Marcus presented the technical findings. I explained what the violations meant, what would happen if they weren't fixed. I used words like fire trap and death trap and criminal negligence. I showed photographs. I cited code. Charles Westbrook sat in the back row with 3 lawyers, taking notes on everything I said. Daniel sat next to him. Our eyes met once. He looked away first. The council voted to order immediate inspections of all Westbrook properties. The motion passed 7-2. Remediation costs were estimated at $47 million. The story hit the local news that night. By morning, it had gone statewide. My phone exploded with messages from old union buddies, from people I'd worked with decades ago, from strangers. One I read. From Daniel. I will never forgive you for this. You've destroyed everything I worked for. I hope you're happy. I stared at that message for a long time, at the words suggesting Sarah would have approved of any of this. I typed back, I taught you better to build on a bad foundation. Your mother taught you better. What's happening to your father-in-law is his own doing, not mine. He didn't respond. 2 months later, the inspections revealed even more problems: structural issues, asbestos, lead paint. Cost estimates ballooned to over $100 million. Charles Westbrook's company filed for bankruptcy. Criminal investigations were launched. The mayor resigned. Daniel lost his job when the company laid off 80% of its staff. 3 months after that, I got a letter. Handwritten envelope. Return address in Sacramento. From Daniel. I almost didn't open it. Let it sit on my kitchen table for 2 days. Inside was a single page. Dad, I got a job. Real engineering work. It's with a firm in Sacramento that designs renewable energy systems, the kind of work that actually matters. The pay is half what I was making, but the work is real. Isabel and I are separated. The papers were filed last week. She couldn't handle the change, couldn't handle being married to someone who had to work for a living. Maybe that's for the best. I found Mom's letters, the ones she wrote me before she died. I read them again. She wrote about integrity, about doing the right thing even when it costs you something, about not being ashamed of where you come from. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just thought you should know. Your son, Daniel. I read it 3 times, then picked up the phone. Daniel answered on the 3rd ring. Dad? His voice cracked. like he wasn't sure he still had the right to call me that. "Your mother would be proud of you," I said. I heard him breathe, heard something that might have been a sob. "You think so?" "I know so. She always said the measure of a person isn't what they do when it's easy, it's what they do when it costs them something." Silence. Then, "Can I come visit? Maybe this weekend?" I looked around my kitchen, at the empty chair, at Sarah's picture, at Daniel's room down the hall, exactly as he'd left it. "Your room's still here. It's always been here. I never changed a thing." "I'll see you Saturday, around noon?" "I'll make lunch, nothing fancy." "Just like it used to be. That sounds perfect, Dad." After we hung up, I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. The house didn't feel quite so empty anymore. I thought about Sarah, about how she'd taught Daniel to stand up for what was right, about how she'd lived her whole life that way. I thought about the buildings downtown that would be safe now, about the people who would go to work tomorrow and come home safe because someone had refused to look the other way. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything you thought mattered. Sometimes it gives you back what actually does. Saturday, when Daniel pulls up, when he walks through that door and sits at that kitchen table, I'll know I made the right choice. Not because I won, because I didn't lose myself trying to keep someone who'd already let go.